Hey everybody, this is Tracy here to recap episode 5 of Issa Rae's Insecure, which airs on HBO on Sunday nights. Before we get into the actual recap, let's just fast forward to the end real quick because Issa, girl, how did you let him trick you like this? You fell for the let's hang out some more. Okay, let's hang out just a little bit more until I get you where I want you scheme that Daniel just pulled on you. But we'll get to that later in the episode. So let's start off with, in the beginning, Issa and Lawrence are sitting down and she's showing Lawrence the video from where she did the Broken Pussy rap song at the nightclub and letting him know, that the kids have found it and that they're ragging her about it. And so, Lawrence, he thinks it's cute and, he's impressed with her rap skills. And so he tells her, don't worry about it. Kids are going to be kids and they'll get over it. By the time the weekend is over with, they will have forgotten about, the whole video and moved on to something else. And so Issa hopes so, but as we find out, that's not the case because when she goes back to the classroom, the kids have like memorized the entire song and they're still talking about it. And so, she's apologizing to the teacher, and the teacher is like, let's hope it passes soon because one of the kids was already teaching some of the other kids how to do the rap in Spanish. And so Issa's like, oh my God, is this ever going to be over with? And so, she's all in her feelings and she's trying to figure out, who posted the video online so they can get the video taken down. And I'm thinking to myself, like most file sharing sites like YouTube, you just go to the person that created the account where the video is set up and you ask them to take it down. And if they won't take it down, of course you can contact YouTube or whoever the host is and see if they will assist you. But I guess for the sake of the show, that route isn't being taken. And so she's calling around trying to find out how she can get it taken down. And then she goes to Molly and she's telling Molly how she wants to sue the person. And then Molly's like, okay, well, who put the video up? And when she tells Molly, she doesn't know who put the video up. Molly's like, okay, well, exactly who am I supposed to sue? And so Molly goes back to reviewing a case that was on her desk, and Issa's just sitting there, and she's like making noise with I think it was the paperclip holder. And Molly looks at her like, some of us do have work to do. And Issa was like, oh, well, excuse me. So because, Molly isn't paying her much attention, she goes off to Daniel. And so, her and Daniel are trying to brainstorm and figure out, who could have put the video up. And, he's going to make some phone calls and everything. And I think Issa, she's loving the attention that she's getting from Daniel and the time that they're spending together, which is how she ends up where she ends up at the end of the show. But we're not ready to go there yet. We learned that Molly and Classic Man, they've already slept together. As a matter of fact, it looks like he spent the entire weekend with her. And so they're laying in bed and they're talking. And he says something about, he needs to get up and get home and shower and get ready to work, because he can't go to work wearing blue jeans. And so he makes a comment about, he needs to carry around a duffel bag with an extra change of clothes in it. And so Molly thinks that's a great idea. And she tells him, yeah, why don't you bring over an extra set of clothes that you can leave here? And so that got him out that bed real quick. And so while he's getting dressed, she invites him to, you remember the coworker Diane is engaged. So her and Jamal are having their engagement party that night, I think it was. And so Molly invites Classic Man to go with her. And so he tells her, well, I have work and all of this stuff, but, I'll see if I can make it. And so, she takes that as a yes. And so later on in the day, she's getting dressed for the party and, she's texting him to see, if he's coming to pick her up. And he says, well, I'm still working, but, maybe I can meet you there later. And, she falls back on the bed like, dang. And I'm just thinking, Molly, when are you going to learn that you can't just keep sleeping with guys, thinking that makes a relationship and that's going to keep you guys together? It just doesn't work out that way. And especially, in today's society, not too many men are going to fall for the sex on the first night thing. There's too many women out there giving it away for yours to be so dynamic that you just reel him in, with what's between your legs. So we have Lawrence, and he's at Best Buy playing around with the computers and, doing like some animations on the TV screens and everything. And so Tasha, the bank teller, shows up, and she's dressed in her street clothes. She has like some really tight jeans and this really provocative top, showing off all the ladies up here, And so Lawrence, he's kind of naive, and he asks her, what she looking for? She looking to buy a new computer, and she says no, she was looking for some batteries, and he's like, oh, well, the batteries at the front of the store, and so he's just not getting that, Tasha's there for him. So she finally breaks it down and invites him to meet her after work at some place to get jalapeno poppers and I think she said margaritas. And then he finally catches on that this girl is interested in him. And so he lets her know, he does have a girlfriend. And so she's kind of disappointed, but she doesn't argue about it. She just said, oh, I'm sorry. And she turns around and leaves. And so next we have Lawrence, and he's having dinner with his friend. I can't remember the guy's name, but you might remember him from a previous episode where Lawrence called him and he was at the sports bar with some other guys. So they're having dinner, and the guy is pretty much telling Lawrence that he's getting engaged and that he had sold this lady a house, and I guess he fell in love with her, and so now they're going to get married as soon as her divorce is final. So he's moved in with a married woman. And so Lawrence is like, well, how do you know she's the one? And so he tells Lawrence that, guys know, they just know when they meet the right one. And then he asks about him and Issa, and then he says, well, we're doing okay. And then the guy kind of lets Lawrence know that, if Issa was really that important to him, then they would be doing more than just okay. They wouldn't have been together all these years, and he wouldn't have forgotten her birthday. And I think it kind of gives Lawrence something to think about. But once the guy told him that the woman was still married that he's moving in with, I think he kind of like, maybe I don't want to be taking advice from this guy after all. So earlier in the show, and I think it was after Molly and Classic Man, the scene with the two of them in bed, she goes to work, and she's actually calling Jared, who was the guy that she met at the club, the one that she dumped when she found out that he didn't have a college education. And so she's calling him to see if his brother might know who created the video of Issa, that's floating around on the internet. And so he tells her, he'll look into it. And they continue to talk. He's like, is that the only reason you called? And she was like, at first it was, but now that I hear your voice. And just as that part takes place, here comes Diane, and Diane is like, oh, is that Chris? And of course Jared hears it, and Molly, she's trying to recover from it, but but Jared's like, oh, it's no big deal. And so the two of them end up hanging up, and Molly lets Diane know that, don't be walking in on people calling out names when you don't know who's on the telephone. It's later that evening, and Molly's back home, and she's getting dressed for the engagement party. And so she's texting Classic Man Chris, asking him where is he at? Is he going to come pick her up? And he lets her know that he's busy at work, and it may be later before he can get there. And can he just meet her there? And so I think she kind of thinks that he's not coming. So she's like, that's fine. And she ends up going to the party alone. And so she's hanging out with one of her other co-workers. And so we finally get to meet Jamal. And Jamal and Diane, they are a perfect little couple because they're both goofy as crap. And he is a nice looking brother, but him and Diane, they fit each other really good. And so as they're standing there talking, Classic Man walks up, and then Molly's really happy, that he showed up. And so she's introducing him to her co-workers. And one of the co-workers is like, oh, is this the guy? And then Classic Man, he interjects and he says, yes, I'm her boyfriend, and shakes the guy's hand, so that makes Molly really happy. So the two of them go off to the bar together, and she's like, oh, did you mean that? And he's like, mean what? And she says, you're my boyfriend? And then he says, oh, no, I just did that. I thought we were cool like that. I wanted to give you a save. And so she's like, well, how are you giving me a save? And then he said something about, well, you look like you really needed a win. And so he's basically telling her that, she's coming off as very desperate, the move she made where she wanted him to leave the clothes over, that wasn't a good look, and then inviting him to her coworker's engagement party, and they just met each other. And so Molly didn't want to hear what he had to say because she was offended and all in her feelings, and so she told him, she didn't want to see him anymore. But I think if they had had that conversation and she had let Classic Man, tell her what she needed to hear, she would realize just how thirsty she's coming across, and that she's going to turn most men off, with her desperation because it's reaping through her pores, but she's not catching on to that. So after Classic Man leaves, she starts to drown her sorrows, in the liquor, and she's watching Jamal and Diane, and as people are leaving, and you can tell that the jealousy is just really rising up in her, and how she's just looking at them, really envious and everything. So she leaves the party and finds her way to Jared's, and Jared is watching. I don't know if it's Orange is the New Black or what the hell he was watching on that television, but he seemed to have been enjoying watching whatever it was, sitting at home alone. And so he goes to the door, and Molly's there, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And so she's kind of like. He's kind of like in the female role, and she's in the male role. Like she's coming over and she's like, "Oh, I was in the neighborhood," and he's like, "No, we're not going to do this," and he's getting ready to close the door in her face, and then she's like, wait a minute, and when he opens the door up, she's like, "Can I use your bathroom?" So he lets her in, and then later on we see, she's kind of like fell out on the sofa, and he has the garbage can there for her, and he covers her up, and she's just like tore up from the floor up. She's drunk, but he doesn't try to take advantage of her. He lets her sleep on the sofa, and then he goes to bed. So back to Daniel and Issa, so they're riding around town, trying to find out who posted the video. And I think they went back to the club where they were at that night, and there were no leads. And so I don't know if Daniel doesn't have a car or what's going on with him, but Issa's driving, and so she's like thanking him, for at least trying. And then he asks her to give him a ride to his studio because he has a session that's about to start. And so they're talking in the car, and he's apologizing, because all of this is his fault. And when they get to the studio, he invites her to come in and sit in on the session, and she's like, "Oh no, I need to go home," but of course he convinces her because she's not really ready to let him go at that moment. And so they go in, and the studio was like really dark, like they had these blue lights on or something, and there's already a group of guys in there, and the guys are drinking and getting high and everything. And so um, Daniel introduces Issa to everybody, and he gets one of the guys into the studio. And I don't know what the guy called himself doing. I mean, maybe that's what's hot in the rap game now. I don't know, but it wasn't anything that I would buy. And so when the guy finishes the session, and everybody leaves, it's just Daniel and Issa there, and they start talking about the past and how they ended up not really giving themselves a chance to work out, because I think he stayed in their hometown and she went off to college. And so she came home, and they were just reminiscing and going back and forth, and then there came the kiss, and Issa pulled away, and then he was like, I think she said, "Our time has passed," and he was like, "Oh, okay." And then I guess he wasn't aggressive enough, because then she went in for the kiss, and Daniel realized it was now or never, because he got her out of them clothes and got himself out of them clothes in like 3 or 4 seconds flat. And then he pounced on her, and I mean, there was nothing romantic about it. It was just hot, heavy breathing sex, and he was banging it, and they were banging all over the place, and she was riding him and everything. And I just thought, those guys were sitting in there just, moments earlier getting high. You haven't seen what this place looks like with the light on. Looked like there were a bunch of sheets and blankets thrown across the sofa. It wasn't a good look, Issa, at all. And you are going to regret this in the end. I just know you are. But it was good as it was going on, but then afterwards she's in the bathroom and she's washing up, and then she looks down on the counter and she sees the lotion pump bottle, and it reminded her that she does have a man at home, and just a few days ago, they were promising to be together forever, and that she would let Lawrence buy a lotion pump bottle if that's what he wanted. And so she came to her senses, and she goes and gets dressed and grabs her things, and she leaves. And through all of this, Daniel never woke up. He was laying on that sofa asleep because he hadn't got him some good nookie, and that was all he wanted and all he needed. And so, the show ends with Issa, she's got to go home and face Lawrence, after what she's done. And, I think what happened between Issa and Daniel is probably very common. I'm sure we've all, fell for the okey doke and regretted it later when we knew we had something better at home. But at least they were able to get a release and get their frustrations out of the way. So we'll see what happens next week. So that's it for episode 5 of Insecure. I hope you guys enjoyed the recap. And if you have any comments, if I left anything out, please share it below. And don't forget to share the video, rate, and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. And until next time, see you guys later. And don't forget to vote. Bye bye.